I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown, a bonus episode coming to you here on a Thursday. If you don't know, for the past 10 years now on season 10, I've been giving out accurate Oscar predictions each and every single week, Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, giving a breakdown of an individual category or a couple categories at once. But now we're in the heat of Oscar season. You know that because we're doing multiple videos a week. We're doing doubling up categories with the original screenplay categories. That's this kind of sign to turn that we're really starting to be in the thick of Oscar season, which excites me just so much. But what excites me less is new categories. I try to make a business on being accurate and being correct with my predictions. So whenever you have something new, it's hard to be kind of the definitive expert in something because no one is the expert on it. So we're going to be doing a deep dive. I wanted to do on this brand new category for best casting its own video because we have just a lot of things to consider and a lot of factors to consider. So instead of putting it in its own category or in another video where we have to do less time towards it, we're going to do a big long video deep dive on this category to ultimately help you with your predictions. That's why I make these videos, to create a great community, to give you my predictions and my thoughts, and to ultimately help you guide and make your own. But that also is reliant on you giving your thoughts in the comments down below. So feel free to do that. I always love hearing that. And like I mentioned up top, subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out these videos. And you just come in on Mondays and then, wait, actually I missed a video on Thursday, or I missed predictions videos. When we get closer on in the season, that's going to be more likely. So feel free to subscribe to the channel. And if you want to hear my thoughts on individual movies, you can also see the timestamps in the description below to jump around in the video. But without further ado, let's get into things. And the first part of this video, the first couple minutes here, I just want to do a kind of category discussion, talk about the new category, the new rules, and what I think is going to happen, and how I'm going to essentially treat this category, and what my criteria is, so that when I make my picks, you will understand, I made this pick here because it checks off all of my criteria, for example. Or this one isn't in, checking off all my criteria, so it's only in the 4th or 5th spot. Things like that establish a criteria that we think they're going to appreciate, and then essentially apply those movies to that criteria. Make sense? Hopefully it will now after I do some explaining. So the first thing that we should say up top is that nobody really knows what this category is going to be. So anyone that claims to be an expert is just going to be wrong. This is the first year of this category. We have some indications and some questions. And for me, the big question is this category going to be more like BAFTA's Best Casting category or more like SAG's Best Ensemble category? And there are some distinct differences there. So I chose those two in particular because SAG and BAFTA, industry award shows, very important precursors and relevant and accurate precursors in terms of predicting the Oscars. And those are two of the kind of similar cast ensemble type of categories, the most easy one-to-one comparisons. Now, the best casting category at the BAFTAs lean more so towards newcomers or movies that have kind of discovered new stars. They'll oftentimes have, Best Picture nominees like Elvis or Nora or A Complete Unknown. But they do still place an emphasis of those Best Picture nominees on big, large casts, but also kind of discoveries of some of newer actors within that cast. That's their preference. And then on the SAG Ensemble side, it's less so on the newness of an actor, but more so the kind of expansiveness of the cast. Having a lot of actors, a lot of famous people really helps. But in many ways, that's also their Best Picture award. So I do think of the two categories, my prediction of how it's going to play out is going to lean more like BAFTA's Best Casting. So to me, that means this category for the Oscars is going to appreciate more movies with breakout stars. So one of my predictions we'll talk about later would be something like One Battle After Another, because Chase Infinity is a breakout star, leading that movie, particularly in the second half. And for a lot of people, this is the first time seeing her. So it's a movie that's really well liked, and then also has, a breakout star. I think this category is also going to appreciate legends. We see this oftentimes in the technical categories, categories like Best Score or Best Cinematography. Roger Deakins gets nominated all the time when he does a movie. John Williams, as long as he does a movie, he's getting nominated. The below-the-line categories like to reward people who are kind of seen as legendary in their own world. And because the Best Casting Award, this is the first year, a lot of these quote-unquote legends, of course, haven't been nominated before. So they're going to want to reward, I think, the top of the top in the first year over newcomers to kind of show their due and show their respect and show to the world, like, these are what the casting people think are the best casting directors. So I think an emphasis on legends, people who have won a lot of other awards or have done a lot of casting since the 80s and 90s, that will be more so appreciated, I think, in this category, as well as finding those new discoveries, as well as just generally, like any other category, having a movie that is well liked. But all of this category and criteria and these predictions may make no sense in a couple of weeks, because importantly for this category, it has two things. First off, it has a shortlist, and second off, it has a bake-off. So if you're unaware, a shortlist, as it explains, essentially, there will be an initial voting process of which will eventually be released to the public, 10 films that will be eligible to be nominated for the Oscars. So it will make our lives a little bit easier, where we essentially will have to pick 5 out of those 10 to get nominated for Best Picture, which isn't the case of every category, of course. So some of my predictions may end up getting cut off the shortlist and therefore irrelevant. So of course, keep it up to date. My final predictions will happen for every single category in one video, much closer to Oscar nominations morning. But we're trying to, predict that and be ahead of that and talk about that there. So there will be a shortlist that will definitely help you with your own predictions. The second thing is, once those shortlisted films are announced, those 10 films will be shown off in a bake-off, which is just to say a big kind of event where a lot of Academy member voters and members, mostly within the casting branch, will attend a presentation of each of the individual shortlisted films, and they will do a presentation and talk about why they think they should get nominated. This is a process that does exist in something like the visual effects category as well, where the visual effects artist can show you, like, this is what we did. This was the visual effects of the movie. And oftentimes movies that do quite well in that bake-off will get nominated at the Oscars. So we'll see like surprise nominations sometimes, like, why did that get nominated for Best Visual Effects? Well, if you were paying attention and heard the reports from people in the room, that was a movie that did very well in the room. So therefore it got nominated there. Some of the surprise nominations sometimes you can see within those bake-offs, so that's something that we're going to have to monitor, but that hasn't happened yet. The shortlist hasn't happened yet, so that's something that's going to be coming down later on the road. So just as a summary there, I'm going to emphasize in my predictions legends, movies that are well-liked, Best Picture nominees, movies with expansive casts and lots of casting, because many times with these below-the-line categories, we like most costumes, most score. I think it's going to apply here as well in terms of most casting, but also in the important part too is less of great bunch of famous people and more so big cast, but a couple of key standout new people where you go, who is that? I think a little bit more of an emphasis on like the BAFTA best casting side of things, which is what their appreciation has been, and less so on the SAG's best ensemble category, if that makes sense. All right, now with my first prediction, I'm going to go with Sinners. And this is a movie that kind of hits all of my pre-established criteria. So if my criteria is correct, it will get nominated here. It's just got so many things going for it. So the first one being, it's got an expansive cast, a diverse cast, and with one real key breakout, a person who's never been in a movie before and is the lead of this movie in Miles Caton, for the lead there in Preacher Boy. And the discovery of him is really great, and I think a lot of people who like the movie oftentimes go, oh wow, who is this guy? He can sing, he can act, he's leading this movie. He's a real kind of standout and a find that I think will be appreciated by the casting director. That's big. Then the diversity of the casting, I think, is also true. You literally have movie stars and non-movie stars. You have lesser-known people like Jamie Lawson, but then you also have legends like Delroy Lindo. You have black, but you also have white. You have young, you have old, you have famous, you have non-famous. So you have a real diversity in the different types of casting that I think helps. The casting director is Francine Maisler, who is, I would say, a legendary casting director. In the Best Casting Award of the BAFTAs, it's only been around for 6 years, and she has been nominated twice of those 6 years. So well respected, definitely. Does casting all the way back until the early 90s and late 90s with key kind of breakouts of young actors like Gattaca. That was a big breakout cast, or Reality Bites, or The Usual Suspects. Francine Maisler was largely responsible for discovering a lot of those major movie stars that we see today. And she's continuously working, so she definitely has, I think, a lot of respect within the industry, and has done a couple of movies this year as well, including something like Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere. So there's an added benefit, an added kind of fact on that as well. So a legend with a diverse cast, with a breakout star, an unknown, another huge benefit. Oh, and the movie I think is going to get nominated for Best Picture, and that always helps. With all these categories, Best Picture nominated movies are likely to get nominated in a bunch of these other categories because people just like the movie. So, of course, if they like the movie, they're going to like all the individual elements of the movie as well. Then my next pick is One Battle After Another for similar reasons. In the same way Sinners has its brand new lead of Miles Caton. You also have Chase Infinity, with this movie being the lead actress of the film and being a big breakout. Some people saw her in Presumed Innocent, but for a lot of people this was the first time seeing her, and she is a real kind of movie star breakout for a lot of people, and potentially could be nominated for Best Lead Actress as well. So that's a huge kind of a boost and sign and sign of support and benefit for the movie. Similarly to Sinners 2, you have a bunch of different types of people: black, white, young, old, famous, non-famous. So you have that literally the height of the peak of the peak, the movie star of Leonardo DiCaprio, and then a brand new newcomer and someone like a Chase Infinity. And I think also inspired choices, whether it be, Jim Downey as a Christmas adventurer, or even someone like Tiana Taylor, who is mostly known, less so of an actor, more so for her music career. There were lots of very inspired choices in this film. The casting director is Cassandra Gulakundis, who isn't a legend per se, but has been working a lot on Paul Thomas Anderson's movies and works with Brady Corbett. And I believe also worked on Her for Spike Jonze. So has been working and is respected since, the 90s. Doesn't have as many credits as someone like a Francine Maisler. Mostly works with Paul Thomas Anderson. But I think from the fact that this is just going to be a really well-liked movie, it's going to pick up a bunch of nominations in a bunch of these categories. And then you have the factor of, when I think about best casting, if I'm a fan of One Battle After Another, like I think Academy member voters will be, that's a big casting decision to choose someone like a Chase Infinity, a standout performance like that, to partly lead the movie. It's a big kind of bold decision and a correct decision, a casting decision that was correct and really helped make the movie. And that's something that I think should be considered as well. So One Battle After Another I have as my second pick. Then my third pick, I went with Wicked for Good. And this is a movie that doesn't have as diverse of a cast in terms of it's mostly famous people. That being said, I think they're going to want to reward the casting of these somewhat iconic characters now with this second film, because they didn't have the chance to nominate the first one. Even though it's mostly famous people, I do think the two leads were somewhat unconventional at the time. Ariana Grande, aside from her Nickelodeon stuff, wasn't an actor. She was a pop star. So to just pick her as to lead this movie and to showcase her acting chops was a bit of a bold decision at the time. Same thing with Cynthia Erivo, who was a great singer and a great actor, but still less known than what she is today. She wasn't a A-list movie star at the time of the first Wicked. So I think there's going to be some kind of retroactive appreciation for that. Also a large cast, so a lot of casting. You can even say the same thing with Jonathan Bailey. He was less of a known actor to me before the first Wicked, and I think now is starting to become more of a major movie star. And then we talk about, the casting directors themselves and wanting to emphasize and picking legends. So the casting directors for this movie are Bernard Tesley and Tiffany Canfield. And particularly in regards to Bernard Tesley, he is the definition of a casting director legend. He's the type of guy that wins Lifetime Achievement Awards. He's got incredible IMDb and casting, directing credits, essentially involved in every important Broadway musical in the 21st century, some hand involved in it, and also has the connection to the first Wicked itself. So he is someone who does a lot of films, but also does a lot of theater as well. And I think within the casting community, both in theater and film, he's just an absolute legend. So you have a movie like Wicked for Good, which is going to get nominated for Best Picture. And then you have a really kind of legendary casting director here, another kind of confident one. Less so in terms of the diversity of the cast or it being a huge breakout newcomer, but the success of the film itself that I believe in, as well as the just general appreciation of a legend like Bernard Tesley, I think will push it over the edge. Then my fourth pick, I went with Marty Supreme. And this is a pick more so on the creativity of the casting than it is the standouts or the newness. It's got a lot of things going for it. Less so of a legend of a casting director, but it does have that creativity. Actors in this movie include Tyler, the Creator, or Kevin O'Leary, or Penn Jillette. Not actors, musicians, or reality TV businessmen, or, magicians. They're, have key parts within this movie. Then even just the fact that you have someone like a Gwyneth Paltrow, who aside from the Marvel stuff, hasn't really acted in 15 or so years in movies. So to get her is a kind of big get, a big casting get. And then even you have the introduction of Odessa Zion, who for a lot of people, they don't really know her too well, including myself. And apparently she's an excellent part of the movie and is very good within it. So the kind of discovery of her for many people will have an appreciation there. And then you have the fact that Marty Supreme, I think, may be a Best Picture nominee. Now, my concern ultimately is that it's such a Chalamet-focused movie that the ensemble maybe won't be as big or grand and therefore won't be as well appreciated. But I think this is more of an emphasis on creativity in casting and casting a lot of non-actors in roles, as well as the discovery of someone like an Odessa Zion and the newness of that and newness of her will be, an appreciation on the casting side of things. Then my fifth pick, I kind of went against some of my criteria and went with one that just makes sense on a kind of a guttural level. And I picked It Was Just an Accident. Now, I didn't do it completely just based on feeling. There is some stats and thoughts and analysis. First off, in a lot of my predictions, I've been trying to lean a little bit more international with my predicts over-indexed in that sense, because I do think that will ultimately pay off. Every year we see some international movie surprise and we're all shocked, and we see it time and time again. So this year I'm just going to try to over-predict international movies and then try to pick up a couple of those surprise predictions as well. That could be one case here. I do think what's notable is that this movie doesn't have any movie stars and yet it has great acting within it. So I think for a lot of people, including myself, I don't know any of these actors in this movie. So in a sense, it's kind of like finding 5 breakout actors within the movie, people who I've never seen before, who are all great. It is, in the sense, the casting of Iranian actors who don't have a lot of credits to themselves, who are definitely not known within Hollywood. I think there should be an appreciation of casting directors just generally, of finding, it's a testament to their jobs, of you can make a movie with a bunch of complete unknowns and resonate across the world. What's notable as well, and I couldn't find a casting director credited for the movie, so I think my understanding is that the casting director was Jafar Panahi, so that maybe add another benefit to the casting directing team and the branch of the Academy. Maybe they don't want to reward, directors because it's going to be seen as taking away their job, or maybe they will want to reward a director and have an opportunity within their branch to support a great artist like Jafar Panahi. It's hard to say right now, but ultimately I've seen the movie and you have a bunch of actors who I've never seen before, and they were all great. And I don't think any individual one of them stood out so much so that they will get a nomination. So in a way, this is kind of a way to reward the ensemble themselves and the casting of discovering so many of these great people with these great faces that do such a great job within the film. A movie, by the way, which I think will be very well liked. That was ultimately my consensus there with the pick. Less of a stats, less of a something that meets my criteria exactly in terms of diversity. It is a standout and does have Jafar Panahi, so a little bit of an interesting casting director of a way, but doesn't have the legends. Is well liked though, so it just doesn't fit my criteria perfectly, but I saw the movie and I go, this is a bunch of really interesting, great actors who I've never seen before. Why not casting? Why cannot this be a bunch of brand new people? In the same way, BAFTA will nominate something like Kneecap, which is a bunch of new people I've never seen before who are all great in the movie. In a great movie, even though they're not movie stars, the casting is so much to do with it. So I think It Was Just an Accident will kind of get that benefit as well. And then now transitioning into some of the possible contenders. The first one I have being Sentimental Value. This is a movie that I think won't get appreciated for its casting because it's mostly people who have been seen before. This would be maybe a movie that has 4 acting nominations and then not nominated for Best Casting, even though maybe it should be. It does have the newcomer, I think, for a lot of people of Inga Ibsar-Lilius, who is, I think, going to get nominated for Best Supporting Actress and is great in the movie, and it did mostly much of Norwegian films and TV in the past, so it's definitely a newcomer for a lot of people. But Stellan Skarsgård and even Renate Reinsve have been seen before by Oscar voters, so they don't have that uniqueness of casting. And then the fact of there's not that much casting actually within the movie. It really is these 4 central players and a couple of other people, and that's it. It is a somewhat small cast. There isn't an expansive cast. So if you think about the most casting in the same way we're predicting the most costumes, the most of these other technical categories, the most here doesn't really apply. You also don't really have legendary casting directors. You have a kind of split here between the Norwegian casting director and the American casting director. And there's not kind of like a clear, this is a huge legend that we want to support. maybe the casting branch doesn't know these people as well and doesn't have a huge cast. So that ultimately let me, pushing it towards on the outside. Then my other possible contender, I went with Wake Up Dead Man, which is more of a pick in terms of if this is going to be more of a SAG Best Ensemble kind of reward than a casting award. I think because they're going to, the casting branch is going to reward lots of casting or casting of newcomers, this movie's not going to do well because it's essentially a bunch of movie stars that want to be in Knives Out movies anyways. But if they want to appreciate the challenge of getting all these people's schedules lined up, or just getting some of the biggest movie stars, or the somewhat unconventionality of the choices of a Thomas Hayden Church or a Mila Kunis to fit within the overall ensemble, I think there's going to be maybe an appreciation within casting directors of, yes, you can cast movie stars, but did you cast movie stars that have good chemistry together? That could be something that is more appreciated and the Wake Up Dead Man can benefit from. But ultimately I went with, okay, it has a big cast, yes, but was there any kind of uniqueness in this casting? No, it's a bunch of movie stars that want to be in this kind of a movie. Every movie star on the planet pretty much wants to be in a Knives Out movie. They all jumped at the opportunity to do it. It is unique and an eclectic cast for sure, but I guess maybe personally my lack of knowledge of things, I go, how much casting was done if Ryan Johnson just called up Glenn Close and said, hey, do this movie, and she said yes? Or what's the kind of discovery process there in the casting? Is there any? That's my concerns of it ultimately being left out. But undoubtedly has the most famous people in any cast this year, which may be appreciated and may be an obvious slam dunk of a nomination once we get an understanding of how the casting branch likes to reward these things. I think, though, it will be a little bit more on discoveries than it will be on famous people. That's the big distinction here. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you comment below. Let me know your predictions on the best casting category and how you think things are going to shake out. But that's about it. Until next time, stay tuned.